There was a moment in your life when one word echoed louder than anything else. Why? Why did this happen? Why did it fall apart? Why did the door close just when you were praying for it to open? Why did the person you trusted walk away? Why did the opportunity collapse? Why did the diagnosis come? Why did the betrayal cut so deep? You searched for answers in the quiet of the night. You replayed conversations. You examined your decisions. You questioned your faith. And in that heavy silence, it felt like heaven was not responding. But listen carefully, because this is not coincidence that you are hearing this now. God says, I am replacing your why with a wow. What you thought was the end of your story was only the painful middle. What felt like abandonment was actually divine concealment. And Archangel Michael has been assigned to this season of your life, turning your biggest tragedy into your biggest triumph. You see, when tragedy struck, it did not just wound your circumstances, it wounded your understanding. You believed that if you were faithful, things would flow smoothly. You believed that obedience would protect you from heartbreak. But instead, the ground beneath you shifted. The job ended. The relationship shattered. The dream delayed. The prayer seemed suspended in silence. And the enemy whispered, "This is proof that God has forgotten you." That whisper tried to turn your faith into fear. It tried to make you interpret delay as denial. It tried to make you define your future by your present pain. But heaven was not silent because it was absent. Heaven was silent because it was working. Behind the scenes of your suffering, something powerful was unfolding. There was a spiritual battle you could not see. While you were crying on your pillow, Archangel Michael was standing guard over your destiny. While you were asking, "Why is this happening to me?" heaven was declaring, "Watch what I am about to do for you." The tragedy was not random. It was not meaningless. It was not punishment. It was positioning. And that is why this message carries urgency. Because the season of questioning is coming to a close. The season of revelation is beginning. God is not intimidated by your why. He heard every one of them. He collected every tear. You accorded every sigh. But now He is shifting the language of your life. The same mouth that asked why will soon gasp in awe and say, "Wow." You will look back at this moment, the moment you thought would destroy you, and you will see it differently. You will see that what broke you actually built you. You will see that what delayed you actually prepared you. You will see that what left you actually freed you. This is the divine reversal that heaven had been orchestrating. Understand this clearly. Tragedies often carry hidden assignments. They strip away illusions. They expose false foundations. They reveal who is truly with you and who was only passing through. They force you to confront fears you avoided. And though it felt cruel, it was actually cleansing. Because God cannot pour a wow into a vessel still clinging to an old why. Something had to be shaken. Something had to fall. Something had to be surrendered. And now, the space created by loss is about to be filled with something greater than you imagine. This is why you must open your heart now. Because the shift is not just external, it is internal. The greatest tragedy was not just what happened around you. It was what it tried to convince you about yourself. It tried to convince you that you were forgotten, that you were disqualified, that you were too damaged to recover. But Archangel Michael had been contending for your calling. There was warfare over your future because your future carries weight. The intensity of the battle was proof of the magnitude of the breakthrough. And here is the shocking truth. What you labeled as your biggest tragedy is about to become the foundation of your greatest testimony. The very area where you felt humiliated will become the area where you are honored. The place where you felt weak will become the place where you walk in strength. The chapter you wanted to tear out of your story will become the chapter that inspires others to keep believing. God does not waste pain. He transforms it. He does not ignore injustice. He redeems it. He does not overlook brokenness. He rebuilds it stronger. You are standing at a prophetic threshold. On one side is the echo of why. On the other side is the revelation of wow. The crossing is happening now. The confusion will not last forever. The grief will not define you. The delay will not defeat you. God is replacing your question with a revelation. He is replacing your sorrow with astonishment. He is replacing your despair with divine surprise. And Archangel Michael is clearing the final obstacles standing between your tragedy and your triumph. So if you have been living in the tension of not understanding, if you have been carrying questions with no answers, if you have been wondering whether your pain had purpose, hear this clearly. The story is not over. The reversal has begun. And what is coming will not just answer your why. It will overwhelm you with wow. There comes a moment in every divine story where everything appears to collapse at once. It is the breaking point, the moment when your strength feels insufficient, when your faith feels stretched thin, when the weight of disappointment presses against your chest so heavily that even breathing feels like effort. This was not just a difficult season for you. It was a moment that changed everything. A call you never expected. The message that shattered your peace. The decision that altered your path. The door that slammed shut without warning. And in that instant, you did not feel chosen. You felt rushed. You prayed. You fasted. You believed. Yet the outcome did not match your expectation. That is what made it hurt even more. It is one thing to suffer when you are far from God. It is another to suffer while standing in faithfulness. You asked, Lord, I did what you told me to do. Why did this still fall apart? But what you could not see was that heaven measures success differently than earth does. The black collapse with what looked like loss was divine rearrangement, and what felt like rejection was strategic redirection. God often allows pressure before promotion. He allows breaking before breakthrough, because some blessings are too heavy to carry in your old condition. Some triumphs require a stronger version of you. The breaking point was not sent to destroy you. It was sent to develop you. In the heat of that pressure, something was being refined inside you. Your dependence shifted from people to God. Your identity shifted from titles to truth. Your confidence shifted from circumstances to calling. And even though you felt like you were losing everything, you were actually being positioned for something greater. Understand this clearly. The enemy thought that your breaking point would be your ending point. The enemy assumed that the disappointment would silence your faith. The enemy calculated that the heartbreak would paralyze your purpose. But there was a miscalculation. Because while you were breaking, Archangel Michael was battling. While you were grieving, heaven was guarding. While you were confused, God was coordinating. There was protection in the middle of your pain. There were doors that never opened because they would have led to destruction. There were plans that fell apart because they would have limited your destiny. What you called devastation was often divine interception. Think about it. If that relationship had continued, would you have become who you are now? If that opportunity had succeeded, would you have settled for less than your calling? If that comfort had remained, would you have pursued God with the same desperation? Sometimes the breaking point is the birthplace of spiritual authority. It strips away comfort and forces clarity. It shakes illusions and reveals truth. It exposes hidden weaknesses and strengthens them through fire. And though it felt unbearable, it was necessary. The breaking point also reveals who truly stands with you. When everything is going well, support is abundant. But when everything crumbles, only the real remains. God allowed certain people to exit because they were not meant to witness your triumph. Some could handle your struggle but not your elevation. Some were comfortable with your pain but not your promotion. And so, separation became protection. You may not have understood it then, but the breaking point marked the end of an old season. It was the final chapter of a limited version of you. Heaven was closing one door while preparing a gate that would require greater strength, deeper faith, and sharper discernment. The pressure was stretching your capacity. The silence was strengthening your endurance. The delay was increasing your hunger for divine direction. And the tears you cried were watering the soil of your future harvest. Right now, I want you to recognize something powerful. The breaking point did not break your spirit. You are still here. You are still believing. You are still seeking God. That alone is proof that the enemy did not win. And if this message is speaking directly to your situation, do not stay silent. Like this video as a prophetic declaration that your breakthrough is closer than it appears. Share it with someone who is standing at their own breaking point. Comment I receive as an act of agreement with what God is declaring over your life. Subscribe to this channel and become part of a community that refuses to surrender in the middle of the storm. When you engage, you are not just interacting with content. You are aligning yourself with a message of divine reversal. Because here is the truth. The breaking point was never meant to define you. It was meant to introduce you to the strength you did not know you possessed. It was meant to shift you from comfort to calling, from routine to revelation, from limitation to expansion. What felt like the end was actually the edge of something greater. The breakdown was preparing the breakthrough. The pain was preparing the promotion. The collapse was preparing the comeback. And now, as God declares that He is replacing your why with a wow, understand that the breaking point was a bridge. It was the narrow path between tragedy and triumph. It was the furnace that forged resilience. It was the night that prepared you for sunrise. And very soon, you will look back at this moment, the moment that nearly crushed you, and realize it was the very thing that qualified you for the triumph that is coming. There were nights when no one saw you cry. Moments when you held yourself together in public, but fell apart in private. Times when you smiled for others, yet questioned everything when you were alone. You may have felt invisible in your pain, but heaven was watching closely. Not casually, not distantly, intentionally. God did not overlook a single tear that fell from your eyes. Every sob was counted. Every silent prayer was recorded. Every broken whisper of why rose before His throne. What felt hidden on earth was highly visible in the spirit. You thought your suffering was unnoticed. You thought the silence meant indifference. But heaven heard what no one else heard. When your voice trembled, when your faith felt fragile, when your strength felt almost gone, that was not weakness in God's eyes. That was worship in its rawest form. Because you still turned toward Him, even when you did not understand Him. You still whispered His name, even when you questioned His timing. And that kind of faith moves the heavens. There is a spiritual record of your endurance, a divine account of your perseverance. You were not just surviving a difficult season, you were passing a test that qualified you for greater authority. In the unseen realm, something significant was happening while you were crying. Archangel Michael was not idle. There was movement in the spiritual atmosphere. There were battles being fought over your destiny. There were forces that tried to use your tragedy to push you into permanent despair. But heaven intervened. God does not waste suffering. He transforms it. The tears you cried were not signs of defeat. They were seeds. Seeds planted in the soil of surrender. And seeds always produce harvest when the time is right. You may not have seen growth immediately, but underground, roots were forming. Strength was developing. Discernment was sharpening. Compassion was deepening. You were becoming someone who could carry greater glory without collapsing under its weight. This is the divine exchange taking place right now. God is trading your sorrow for strength. He is exchanging your confusion for clarity. He is replacing your heaviness with holy expectation. The season of unanswered questions is shifting into a season of undeniable evidence. What you once wept over, you will soon witness transformed. The very area that caused you the most pain will become the place where God's power is displayed most visibly. And here is the turning point. The tears were not the end of your story. They were the signal that change was near. Often, breakthrough follows breakdown. Revelation follows desperation. There is a moment in the Spirit when heaven declares, enough. Enough delay. Enough pressure. Enough testing. And that moment is closer than you think. What is about to unfold will not merely comfort you. It will astonish you. You may not feel it yet, but there is a shift happening. Doors that were locked are loosening. Hearts that were hardened are softening. Paths that were blocked are clearing. You endured more than you thought you could. And because you endured, you are stepping into a new level of spiritual authority. The enemy underestimated your resilience. He thought the tears would drown your faith. Instead, they purified it. Let this sink in. God was closer in your tragedy than you realized. The silence was not absence. It was orchestration. The delay was not denial. It was design. The pain was not pointless. It was preparation. And soon, you will see proof that heaven heard every tear you cried. There is something else you must understand. When heaven responds, it does not respond halfway. When God replaces your why with a wow, the shift is undeniable. It will not be subtle. It will not be small. It will carry the fingerprints of divine intervention. The same people who saw you struggle will witness your elevation. The same environment that held your sorrow will host your celebration. And as this unfolds, remember this moment. Remember that you were told your tears were seen. Remember that you were warned that reversal was coming. Because what comes next will confirm that this was never random. You'll be grateful you heard this now, because what is about to be revealed in the next phase will make everything align with stunning clarity. And now, as an act of prophetic agreement, type my whys turning into WOW in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 914 is now activated. And if this message has reached you in the middle of your tears, if it has spoken directly into your hidden pain, then hear this as part of the same divine flow. When you sow into a word that strengthens your spirit, you become part of the harvest it produces in others. This channel is not just content. It is a field where seeds of hope are planted daily. Every super thanks, every membership, every PayPal gift becomes oil in the lamp, keeping this light burning for souls who are still crying in the dark. God says in Luke 6:38, "Give, and it will be given to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." This is not a transaction. It is a spiritual exchange. I feel led to say this clearly. I am stepping forward in faith to fuel the spread of this message. When you respond, you are not supporting a platform. You are helping heaven reach someone who is on the edge of giving up. The PayPal link is in the description. and the QR code is flashing on your screen. Obey the prompting in your spirit right now. As you sow, may God multiply your seed, open unexpected doors, and replace every remaining why in your life with undeniable wow. When God says, "I am replacing your why with a wow," He is not speaking in poetry. He is revealing a strategy. Heaven does not operate randomly. There is divine intelligence behind every delay, every detour, every dismantling. What you experienced was not chaos without control. It was a carefully measured transition. The pain felt sudden to you, but it did not surprise God. And now, the same God who allowed the question is orchestrating the replacement. To replace something means to remove what was and install something greater in its place. God is not simply answering your why with an explanation. He is answering it with a demonstration. He is not giving you a paragraph of reasoning. He is giving you a manifestation that speaks louder than logic. There are moments when God explains, and there are moments when He overwhelms. This is the season of overwhelming. The divine replacement strategy begins with removal. Before there can be a wow, there must be space for it. Sometimes that space is created through loss. Sometimes through exposure. Sometimes through disappointment. What felt like subtraction was actually preparation. God was clearing what could not sustain the weight of your next level. He was dismantling foundations that would have cracked under future pressure. And though you grieved what left, you will soon understand why it could not remain. In Scripture, divine reversals follow this pattern. There is always a valley before elevation, a pruning before fruitfulness, a refining before reward. The replacement is not equal to what was lost. It exceeds it. God does not restore you to your previous condition. He upgrades you beyond it. When He replaces, He does so with increase. The sorrow is not simply removed. It is exchanged for strength. The delay is not merely ended. It is replaced with acceleration. The shame is not just erased. It is transformed into honor. You may still be holding fragments of your why, trying to analyze it, trying to make sense of it. But the divine strategy is not centered on explanation. It is centered on elevation. God knows that if He only explained the tragedy, you would still carry the memory of pain. So instead, He chooses to overshadow it with something so powerful that the question loses its grip. The testimony will be so strong that the trauma will no longer define you. The law of spiritual compensation is already at work. What was stolen will be restored. What was delayed will be delivered. What was broken will be rebuilt stronger than before. And not by coincidence, by design. God saw the injustice. He saw the betrayal. He saw the doors that closed unfairly. And though it seemed as if nothing happened in response, heaven was calculating restoration. But here is what makes this strategy remarkable. The replacement often comes from an unexpected direction. It may not look like what you originally prayed for. It may exceed it in ways you did not imagine. Sometimes we become attached to a specific outcome, believing it is the only way our promise can manifest. But God's vision is wider. His perspective is eternal. He does not replace according to your limited sight. He replaces according to His limitless purpose. You are entering a season where clarity will silence confusion, where provision will silence lack, where peace will silence anxiety. The very area that carried your deepest why will soon carry your loudest wow. And when it happens, you will realize that the tragedy was a doorway. A painful doorway, yes, but a necessary one. The divine replacement strategy also involves transformation within you, because the blessing that is coming requires a different mindset. The opportunity ahead requires deeper discernment. The influence you are stepping into requires stronger character. God is not only changing your circumstances, He is strengthening your capacity. He is ensuring that when the wow arrives, you can sustain it. And understand this, timing is everything. If the replacement had come earlier, you might not have recognized its value. If it had come before the breaking, you might have taken it lightly. But now, after what you have endured, you will not mishandle what is coming. You will cherish it. You will steward it. You will honor the process that prepared you for it. The strategy is precise. The replacement is intentional. And the result will be undeniable. What is coming will not feel forced. It will feel orchestrated. Doors will open with unusual ease. Connections will align with unusual favor. Opportunities will arise with unusual clarity. And you will sense that heaven has stepped into your situation. God is not ignoring your past. He is redeeming it. He is not pretending the pain did not happen. He is transforming its outcome. The why, with a chapter. The wow is a new beginning. And this new beginning carries more glory than the previous season ever could. So release your grip on the question. Release the need to understand every detail. Trust the strategy unfolding behind the scenes. Because when God replaces, He does so completely. He does not patch what was broken. He introduces something better. He does not merely repair the damage. He redefines the narrative. Your tragedy is not being erased. It is being rewritten into triumph. The replacement has begun. And very soon, what once made you weep will be the very thing that makes you stand in awe. There are battles in your life that were never just physical, emotional, or circumstantial. They were spiritual. What looked like a series of unfortunate events was often a coordinated attempt to derail your destiny. The intensity of the opposition was not random. It was targeted. Because your calling carries weight. Your future carries influence. And when heaven has marked someone for purpose, resistance follows. But here is what you must understand in this hour. You were never fighting alone. Archangel Michael has been actively involved in your turnaround. Michael is not assigned to minor matters. He is a warrior, a defender, a guardian over destinies that carry divine significance. When warfare intensifies around a person's life, it is often evidence that something valuable is at stake. The enemy does not attack what is insignificant. He attacks what threatens his plan. And your life, even in its brokenness, posed a threat. That is why the battle felt relentless. That is why the pressure seemed disproportionate to the situation. It was not just about what you lost. It was about what you were meant to gain. While you were focused on surviving day by day, Michael was confronting forces you could not see. There were spiritual blockades attempting to delay your advancement. There were unseen assignments aimed at magnifying your discouragement. There were whispers designed to distort your perception of God. But those whispers were intercepted. Those attacks were challenged. Those plans were disrupted. The fact that you are still standing is evidence that protection was present. You may ask, if there was protection, why did I still go through pain? Because protection does not always mean prevention. Sometimes protection means preservation. It means the attack did not succeed in destroying you completely. It means the enemy's plan was limited. It means what was meant to end you only refined you. Michael's role was not necessarily to remove every difficulty, but to ensure that the difficulty did not remove you from your destiny. There were moments when circumstances could have spiraled further. Moments when one more disappointment might have broken you entirely. Moments when one wrong decision could have redirected your future permanently. But something restrained the outcome. Something shifted the trajectory. Something kept you from falling beyond recovery. That was not coincidence. That was intervention. Archangel Michael fights battles that align with God's greater purpose. And your tragedy became the battlefield where your triumph would be secured. The enemy attempted to label you defeated. He tried to brand your life as a failure. He tried to use public disappointment to create private shame. But in the spirit, there was resistance against that verdict. Heaven did not agree with the enemy's conclusion about you. There is a powerful truth in this. Whenever God prepares to elevate someone, there is confrontation beforehand. Not because God is unsure, but because opposition reveals authenticity. The fire tests what is real. The battle proves endurance. And your endurance has already shifted the outcome. The enemy underestimated your ability to remain connected to God in the middle of confusion. He assumed you would walk away. He assumed you would grow better. He assumed you would surrender your calling. But you did not. And because you did not surrender, heaven intensified its defense. Michael's presence in your story signals something important. Your destiny is not ordinary. The magnitude of warfare corresponds with the magnitude of reward. You were not attacked because you are weak. You were attacked because you are dangerous to darkness. Your faith, even when shaken, carries power. Your obedience, even when imperfect, carries impact. Now the season of active confrontation is shifting into a season of visible victory. What was secured in the unseen is about to manifest in the seen. The battles that were fought quietly are about to produce outcomes publicly. Doors that seemed locked by resistance will open with unusual authority. Situations that felt stuck will begin to move. You will sense momentum replacing stagnation. This turnaround is not accidental. It is strategic. Michael's role was to clear the spiritual debris that stood between you and your promise. To dismantle obstacles you did not have the strength to confront alone. To ensure that the enemy's accusations did not become your identity. And now that the battlefield is shifting, the focus moves from defense to advancement. You may still carry memories of the struggle. You may still remember how intense it felt. But soon, those memories will be reframed. Instead of asking why the battle happened, you will understand what the battle protected. Instead of mourning the hardship, you will recognize the authority it produced in you. You will walk with a new confidence, not because life is subtly easy, but because you know you are guarded. Archangel Michael's involvement in your turnaround is a sign that this is more than recovery. It is restoration with power. It is promotion with protection. It is triumph with testimony. The tragedy did not disqualify you. It qualified you for greater spiritual strength. And as the dust settles, you will realize something profound. The enemy never had the final word. The verdict over your life was never defeat. It was always destined. The battle was real. The pain was real. But the preservation was also real. And now, as the season shifts, you are not stepping forward as a victim of tragedy. You are stepping forward as a warrior who survived it. The turnaround has begun. The warfare is giving way to fulfillment. And what was once a battlefield is becoming the birthplace of your triumph. When you were in the middle of your tragedy, purpose was the last thing you could see. All you saw was loss. All you felt was confusion. All you carried was disappointment. Purpose seemed like a distant concept, almost insensitive to mention in the face of real pain. But now that the dust is beginning to settle, God is revealing something deeper. There was a hidden purpose woven into every painful detail. The tragedy did not arrive empty. It carried instruction. It carried transformation. It carried preparation. You thought it was only taking from you, but it was also depositing something within you. Strength you did not know you possessed. Discernment you did not know you needed. Endurance you would not have developed any other way. Paid as a way of exposing what comfort conceals. When everything is going well, weaknesses can hide quietly beneath the surface. But when pressure increases, what is fragile becomes visible. The tragedy exposed fears you had ignored. It revealed attachments that had replaced trust in God. It uncovered patterns that needed breaking. And while that exposure felt uncomfortable, it was necessary. Because God cannot elevate what has not been purified. There was refinement happening in the fire. Just as gold must endure intense heat to remove impurities, your character was being strengthened through adversity. The version of you that existed before the tragedy could not carry the weight of the triumph ahead. There were insecurities that needed dismantling. There were doubts that needed confronting. There were habits that needed surrendering. And the only environment strong enough to force that transformation was the very situation you wished away. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. The enemy believed the tragedy would weaken you permanently. He assumed the heartbreak would define your identity. He calculated that the delay would drain your faith. But what he failed to recognize was that God uses opposition as construction material. The same storm meant to uproot you actually deepened your roots. The same rejection meant to shrink you actually clarified your value. The same delay meant to frustrate you actually sharpened your patience. There is a profound truth hidden here. The area of your greatest pain often becomes the area of your greatest authority. When you overcome something personally, you gain insight that cannot be taught through theory. You gain compassion for others walking through similar valleys. You gain credibility when you speak hope into broken situations. Your tragedy is shaping you into someone who carries wisdom, not just information. Think about how you see life now compared to before. You are more aware, more discerning, less easily impressed, less easily deceived. You no longer chase what glitters without substance. You value peace over applause. You recognize the difference between noise and true calling. My shift did not come from comfort. It came from crisis. Even your relationship with God has deepened. Before, you may have prayed for blessings. Now, you pray for alignment. Before, you may have sought outcomes. Now, you seek understanding. Before, you trusted in God when it was easy. Now, you trust Him because you have seen Him sustain you when everything else failed. That is growth. That is maturity. That is hidden purpose becoming visible strength. The tragedy also exposed who you truly are. When titles were stripped, when support systems shifted, when plans collapsed, you were left face to face with yourself. And instead of disappearing, you discovered resilience. Instead of surrendering your faith, you refined it. Instead of accepting defeat, you endured. That endurance is not ordinary. It is evidence that something powerful is being cultivated within you. And here is where it all connects. The hidden purpose inside your tragedy is directly tied to the triumph ahead. God does not prepare you without intention. He does not refine you without assignment. He does not stretch you without expansion in mind. Every lesson learned in pain will be applied in promotion. Every tear shed in private will inform your public testimony. Every lonely night will strengthen your leadership in seasons of influence. You may not yet see the full picture, but pieces are beginning to align. Opportunities will arise that require the wisdom you gained in suffering. Conversations will happen where your experience becomes someone else's lifeline. Doors will open that demand the maturity you developed in hardship. What once felt like a detour will reveal itself as direction. Your tragedy was not an interruption of destiny. It was a chapter of preparation within it. The fire did not consume you. It refined you. The storm did not drown you. It taught you to stand. The loss did not erase your future. It clarified it. And one day soon, when you look back, you will no longer ask why the tragedy happened. You will recognize what it produced. You will see that without that breaking, you would not have become who you are now. Without that shaking, you would still be standing on unstable ground. Without that pain, you would not possess this depth. The hidden purpose is unfolding. The strength developed in silence is about to be displayed openly. The character forged in adversity is about to support visible success. And when the triumph arrives, it will not just be a blessing. It will be confirmation that every tear, every delay, every disappointment was shaping you for something greater. Your tragedy carrying purpose, and that purpose is now positioning you for triumph. There comes a moment in every divinely orchestrated story when heaven makes an announcement. Not always with thunder, not always with spectacle, but with certainty. A shift in the atmosphere, a quiet but undeniable sense that something has changed. That moment is approaching for you. After the questions, after the breaking, after the hidden preparation, there is a declaration being released over your life. Triumph is no longer distant. It is emerging. For a long time, it felt like you were living under the shadow of what went wrong. Every new opportunity was filtered through past disappointment. Every small delay felt like a reminder of previous losses. It was as if the echo of tragedy tried to follow you into every new chapter. But now, that echo is weakening. The narrative is shifting. What defined the last season will not define the next. Heaven's announcement of triumph does not erase the memory of what happened. It redefines its meaning. The betrayal becomes a lesson in discernment. The delay becomes a lesson in patience. The heartbreak becomes a lesson in self-worth. The failure becomes a lesson in strategy. Nothing is wasted. Everything is repurposed. And when God announces triumph, it is not fragile. It is fortified by everything you endured. There is a divine decree being spoken over you. What was meant to bury you will now elevate you. What was meant to silence you will now amplify your voice. What was meant to embarrass you will now establish your authority. The enemy attempted to write your conclusion prematurely, but heaven refused to sign off on it. The story was never finished. The chapter of pain was intense, but it was not final. Triumph often begins quietly. It begins with renewed confidence, a fresh idea, an unexpected opportunity, a restored connection, a sense of peace that replaces constant anxiety. You may not recognize it immediately because you have grown accustomed to bracing for disappointment. But this time is different. This time, the momentum will not stall. This time, the door will not close abruptly. This time, what begins will be sustained. There are doors about to open that align with who you have become, not who you used to be. That is why they did not open earlier. The old version of you would have stepped into them with insecurity or impatience. The refined version of you will enter with wisdom and steadiness. Triumph requires readiness, and readiness has been forged through adversity. Restoration is also part of this announcement. Not necessarily the restoration of identical circumstances, but the restoration of capacity. The capacity to trust again. The capacity to dream again. The capacity to risk again. The capacity to hope without fear. The tragedy tried to shrink your world. It tried to make you cautious to the point of paralysis. A triumph extends what trauma attempted to contract. You are not stepping into this new season as the same person who once asked, "Why?" You are stepping in as someone who survived the fire, someone who endured the silence, someone who held on to faith when evidence was scarce. That endurance has given you authority, and authority changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you make decisions. It changes how you respond to opposition. The divine announcement of triumph also carries timing. It does not rush prematurely, and it does not arrive late. It arrives when preparation and opportunity intersect, and you are approaching that intersection now. The internal work hath been done. The lessons have been learned. The character has been strengthened. The foundation has been reinforced. Now the external evidence will begin to match the internal growth. Expected alignment where there was once resistance. Expect clarity where there was once confusion. Expect acceleration where there was once delay. This is not blind optimism. It is the natural progression of a season that has completed its refining work. When preparation is complete, promotion follows. The most powerful part of this announcement is this: your why is losing its power over you. It no longer controls your emotions the way it once did. It no longer dominates your thoughts. It no longer defines your identity. Instead, there is anticipation rising, a quiet confidence building, a sense that something significant is unfolding. And when the visible breakthrough comes, when the opportunity manifests, when the relationship aligns, when the provision appears, when the recognition arrives, you will realize that the announcement was already spoken in the Spirit. You will see that heaven had decided your triumph before circumstances caught up. Your life is not marked by tragedy. It is marked by transition. Transition from questioning to confidence, from sorrow to strength, from confusion to clarity, from setback to setup. The divine announcement is not about returning you to what was. It is about leading you into what is greater. Stand ready. Stand expectant. Stand confident. Because heaven has declared what the enemy could not prevent. Triumph is not a possibility. It is a promise unfolding. And very soon, what once felt like the end of everything will be remembered as the turning point that introduced your greatest victory. Here is a moment that changes everything. It does not always send a warning before it arrives. It does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it appears suddenly, and when it does, it silences every lingering why you once carried. This is the moment God has been preparing you for. The sudden wow. A shift that feels almost too good to be real. The breakthrough that makes you pause and realize that every tear, every delay, every battle was leading here. For so long, you have been conditioned to expect disappointment. You brace yourself before opening emails. You lowered your expectations before conversations. You prepared your heart for another no. But when the wow moment arrives, it interrupts that pattern. It catches you off guard. It arrives from a direction you did not anticipate. It exceeds the scale you imagined. And in that instant, your spirit recognizes it. This is God. The sudden wow is not luck. It is not coincidence. It is not random timing. It is the visible manifestation of invisible preparation. While you were enduring hidden refinement, heaven was arranging public reward. While you were questioning your path, God was aligning the pieces. And now, the alignment produces acceleration. It may come as an opportunity that opens without struggle, a call that confirms what you prayed for, a connection that restores what was broken, a provision that answers months of uncertainty, or even a wave of peace so deep that it replaces years of anxiety. However it manifests, It will carry a signature, divine timing. What makes the wow moment powerful is not just the blessing itself, but the contrast. You will remember how dark the previous season felt. You will remember how heavy your questions were, and that contrast will magnify your gratitude. The joy will not be shallow, because the pain was not shallow. The celebration will not be casual, because the cost was not casual. There will also be public vindication, not necessarily in dramatic confrontation, but in quiet confirmation. The same people who questioned your endurance will see your elevation. The same voices that doubted your path will witness your progress. You will not need to defend yourself. The fruit will speak. This is what happens when God replaces your why with a wow. He does not give partial restoration. He gives undeniable evidence. The sudden shift will make sense of the silence. It will reframe the delay. It will redeem the heartbreak. And you will realize that nothing you endured was wasted. But here's something even more profound. The wow will not just change your circumstances. It will change your confidence. You will no longer question whether God sees you. You will know it. You will no longer wonder if heaven is involved in your life. You will feel it. The sudden breakthrough becomes a permanent anchor for future storms. Because once you have experienced divine reversal, doubt loses its grip. There is also acceleration attached to this season. What was delayed will begin to move quickly. What once required constant effort will begin to flow. What seemed stuck will gain momentum. It may feel overwhelming at first, not in a negative way, but in the way that sudden abundance feels after long scarcity. You will have to adjust to favor. And yet, even in the wow, humility will remain. Because you remember the valley. You remember the nights when all you had was faith. That memory will keep you grounded. It will keep you grateful. It will keep you aware that every good thing unfolding is the result of divine mercy. If this resonates deeply with you, type ISE the WOW in the comments as a declaration of expectation. Blessing code 522 is now activated. And as we stand on the edge of this sudden shift, I want to speak to those who feel this stirring in their spirit. When God releases a wow season, He also calls His people to become vessels of that same blessing for others. This message is reaching hearts across the world because seeds are being sown to keep it alive. When you give through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are not funding a channel, you are fueling a movement of hope. Scripture declares in 2 Corinthians 9:6 that whoever sows generously will also reap generously. This is living, active truth. I sense this invitation strongly. I am stepping forward to sow into the spread of this prophetic word. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code is on your screen. As you give, may your seed return to you pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Step into obedience now. Release your seed and align yourself with the wow God is unfolding. Hold this expectation in your heart. Because what happens next will confirm everything you have endured was leading to this. The sudden shift is closer than you think. And when it arrives, you will not whisper gratitude, you will stand in awe. The promise of triumph is powerful. The sudden wow is real. But there is something equally important in this moment: preparation. Because when God announces victory, He also calls you to align yourself with it. Triumph is not only received, it is stewarded. And the way you prepare now will determine how fully you walk into what is coming. For a long time, you were in survival mode. You were focused on getting through the day, managing emotions, guarding your heart, trying not to fall apart under pressure. But survival is not the same as readiness. Survival keeps you alive. Readiness positions you to advance. And now, the season is shifting from endurance to expectation. Preparation begins internally. You cannot carry a triumphant season with a defeated mindset. If you still secretly believe that disappointment is your default outcome, you will hesitate when opportunity appears. If you still define yourself by past mistakes, you will shrink when favor expands. So the first preparation is mental renewal. You must release the identity formed in tragedy and embrace the identity forged through it. Let go of bitterness. Let go of silent resentment. Let go of the subtle fear that whispers, "What if it falls apart again?" Triumph requires emotional space. Bitterness occupies that space. Fear contaminates that space. But faith clears it. Faith says, "If God sustained me through the worst, He will guide me through the best." Preparation also means sharpening discernment. Not every open door is your door. Not every opportunity is aligned with your assignment. In the last season, you learned painful lessons about misplaced trust and rushed decisions. Now you carry wisdom. Use it. Pray before you respond. Listen before you commit. Evaluate before you agree. Triumph does not mean abandoning caution. It means applying refined judgment. There is also practical preparation. If you prayed for financial increase, are you managing what you have with integrity? If you prayed for influence, are you cultivating discipline? If you prayed for restored relationships, are you healing your communication patterns? The blessings of tomorrow often require the habits of today. God prepares the platform, but you must prepare the character. This is not about striving. It is about alignment. The tragedy shaped you. The battle strengthened you. The wow is approaching you. Now you align yourself with it. You adjust your posture from defensive to expectant. You move from questioning to declaring. You shift from doubting to discerning. There may still be moments when the memory of pain tries to resurface. That is natural. Trauma leaves echoes, but you are not required to live inside those echoes. When old fears attempt to reappear, confront them with new truth. You are not the same person who once felt powerless. You are not as fragile as you once believed. You have survived what you thought would destroy you. That survival was training. Preparation for triumph also involves gratitude before manifestation. Thank God now for what is coming. Speak as if the door is already opening. Act as if the breakthrough is already in motion. Gratitude shifts your focus from what was lost to what is forming. And what you focus on expands in influence over your life. And let me say this clearly, you are closer than you think. The internal shift you feel is not imagination. The growing sense of anticipation is not emotional hype. It is spiritual alignment. Something is moving. Something is aligning. Something is preparing to break open. If this message is strengthening you right now, take a moment to engage with it. Like this video as a declaration that you are preparing for triumph. Share it with someone who is still in the valley but needs to hear that preparation leads to elevation. Comment your testimony or simply write, "I am ready," to align your spirit with what God is unfolding. Subscribe and stand with this community as we move from tragedy into triumph together. Your engagement is not just interaction. It is participation in a prophetic shift. Now here is the deeper truth. Preparation is proof that you believe the promise. When you prepare, you demonstrate expectation. When you align your habits, you show readiness. When you release bitterness, you create capacity. Triumph does not overwhelm those who are prepared for it. It elevates them. You are not waiting passively anymore. You are positioning actively. You are clearing emotional clutter. You are strengthening spiritual discipline. You are renewing your mind. You are guarding your heart. And in doing so, you are signaling to heaven, I am ready for what you promised. The tragedy asked why. The preparation declares what's next. That shift in language is powerful. It marks the transition from confusion to confidence. And as you step forward in readiness, you will find that the triumph does not feel foreign when it arrives. It will feel earned through endurance. It will feel aligned with growth. It will feel like the natural next chapter of a story that refused to end in defeat. You are preparing not just to receive a blessing, but to sustain it. And very soon, the preparation you are walking through now will meet the promise that has been walking toward you all along. There is a profound difference between surviving and overcoming. Surviving means you made it through. Overcoming means you rose above. For a long time, your focus was survival. You were just trying to keep your faith intact, trying to keep your heart from hardening, trying to keep your hope from completely fading. And that season required courage. It required endurance. It required strength you did not know you had. But now, God is calling you into something greater than survival. He is calling you to become an overcomer. A survivor carries scars. An overcomer carries authority. When you were in the middle of your tragedy, you felt like a victim of circumstances. Things happened to you that you did not plan. Doors closed without your consent. People changed without warning. Situation shifted without explanation. And for a while, it felt like life was happening at you instead of for you. But as the season changes, so does your identity. You are no longer defined by what happened to you. You are defined by how you rose from it. Becoming an overcomer does not mean pretending the pain was easy. It does not mean denying the nights you cried or the questions you wrestled with. It means recognizing that those moments did not defeat you. They shaped you. They strengthened you. They sharpened your perception. They deepened your faith. And now, you walk differently because of them. You speak differently too. There is weight behind your words. When you encourage someone now, it is not empty motivation. It is lived experience. When you declare that God restores, it is not theory. It is testimony. When you say that breakthrough follows endurance, it is because you have walked through the valley and emerged on the other side. That is the transformation from survivor to overcomer. An overcomer no longer sees obstacles the same way. Before, a closed door felt like rejection. Now, it feels like redirection. Before, delay felt like punishment. Now, it feels like preparation. Before, opposition felt like proof of failure. Now, it feels like confirmation of purpose. Your perspective has shifted because your spirit has matured. The tragedy tried to convince you that you were weak. It tried to label you as fragile, unlucky, forgotten. But every day you kept going proved that label wrong. Every prayer you whispered in exhaustion was an act of resistance. Every time you chose faith over bitterness, you were stepping into authority. You did not realize it then, but you were training for triumph. Overcomers do not just receive blessings, they steward them. They understand the cost of growth. They value the lessons learned in hardship. They do not take favor lightly because they remember what it felt like to wait. That memory creates humility. It creates gratitude and creates depth. There is also a new boldness rising in you. Not arrogance, not pride, but confidence rooted in experience. You know what it feels like to be broken and rebuilt. You know what it feels like to lose and recover. You know what it feels like to question and then witness divine reversal. That knowledge changes how you carry yourself. You no longer shrink in rooms where you once felt intimidated. You no longer silence your voice out of fear. You have seen what God can do, and that awareness fuels courage. Becoming an overcomer also means releasing the old narrative. You are not the one who went through that tragedy. You are the one who triumphed after it. The language shifts. The identity shifts. The energy shifts. You stop introducing yourself by your pain and start standing in your purpose. And here is something powerful. Your overcoming creates permission for others to rise. When people see you standing after what you endured, it challenges their excuses. It inspires their faith. It reminds them that defeat is not final. Your journey becomes a living example that restoration is possible. You may still carry reminders of the battle, memories, lessons, even scars. But those reminders no longer trigger shame. They trigger gratitude. They remind you of what God brought you through. They remind you that if He sustained you then, He will sustain you again. The shift from survivor to overcomer is not loud. It happens gradually. One decision at a time. One healed thought at a time. One courageous step at a time. Until one day, you look back and realize that the person who once felt overwhelmed would not recognize the strength you now carry. This is who you are becoming. Not someone who barely escaped tragedy, but someone who mastered it. Not someone who was permanently damaged, but someone who was divinely developed. Not someone defined by why, but someone standing in wow. The triumph ahead will not intimidate you because you have already conquered something harder, despair. You have already defeated something heavier, hopelessness. You have already overcome something deeper, doubt. And as you step fully into this new season, remember this: you did not just survive the storm. You learned how to stand in it. You did not just endure the fire. You were refined by it. You are not walking into your future as a fragile survivor. You are stepping forward as a tested, strengthened, confident overcomer. The tragedy was real, but so is your transformation. And that transformation is the bridge between what broke you and what will now bless you. Your triumph was never meant to stop with you. From the very beginning, even in the depths of your tragedy, there was something larger at stake than your personal comfort. What you have endured, what you have overcome, what you are stepping into now, it carries influence. It carries impact. It carries a ripple effect that will move far beyond your immediate situation. When you were asking why, you were focused on survival. You were focused on making it through the storm. But heaven was looking at generations. Heaven was looking at the people who would one day hear your story and find courage because of it. Heaven was looking at the rooms you would walk into with authority shaped by pain. Heaven was looking at the silent battles in others that would be broken because you chose not to quit. Victory creates visibility, not necessarily fame, not necessarily applause, but influence. When someone sees you rise after falling, it changes their belief about what is possible. When someone watches you rebuild after loss, it disrupts their agreement with defeat. When someone observes your faith surviving tragedy, it challenges their decision to give up. The ripple effect of your victory begins with those closest to you. Family members who saw your struggle will now witness your strength. Friends who watched you endure confusion will now see clarity settle over your life. The same conversations that once revolved around pain will begin to revolve around progress. And without preaching, without forcing, your transformation will speak. But it does not stop there. There are people you have not met yet who are connected to your obedience now. There are future conversations where your testimony will be the exact confirmation someone else prayed for. There are moments ahead where you will share what God did for you, and it will break chains of doubt in someone listening. You may never fully measure the reach of your influence, but heaven does. Your tragedy developed compassion in you. It softened your judgment. It deepened your empathy. You no longer look at struggling people with impatience. You look at them with understanding. That compassion is part of the ripple. Because when you speak from experience. When you encourage with sincerity. When you extend grace, you extend it from a place of having needed it yourself. There is also generational impact attached to your victory. Patterns that could have continued are being broken because you endured. Mindsets that once limited your family line are shifting because you refuse to surrender. The way you respond to hardship is rewriting what those after you will consider normal. Strength is becoming the new inheritance. Faith is becoming the new foundation. The enemy did not just attack you for the present. He attacked you because of the future influence tied to your obedience. He understood that if you fell permanently into despair, the ripple would turn negative. But because you stood, because you believed, because you held on when it was hardest, the ripple now carries restoration. Your victory also reshapes your environment. Rooms change when you enter them with confidence forged through adversity. Conversations shift when you speak with calm authority instead of hidden fear. Opportunities expand when you no longer operate from insecurity. People feel the difference. They may not always understand it, but they sense it. This is what happens when God replaces your why with a wow. The transformation becomes contagious. Hope spreads. Expectation rises. Faith strengthens. Not because of perfection, but because of perseverance. And here is something powerful to remember. The ripple effect is not about performance. It is about authenticity. You do not need to exaggerate your story. You do not need to dramatize your growth. Simply living in the truth of what God has done is enough. Authentic triumph carries weight. There will be moments when someone quietly approaches you and says, "Your story helped me." There will be times when your simple words carry unexpected impact. There will be situations where your resilience becomes someone else's blueprint. And in those moments, you will realize that the pain had purpose beyond your personal breakthrough. Even your future decisions will be influenced by what you have learned. You will choose differently. You will lead differently. You will love differently. You will trust differently. And those differences will shape outcomes for years to come. The ripple effect of your victory is proof that your story was never small. It was never insignificant. It was never random. It was strategic. Every tear you cried is now part of a larger testimony. Every delay you endured is now part of a deeper wisdom. Every battle you survived is now part of a broader influence. You are not just stepping into triumph for yourself. You are stepping into it as a catalyst, a signal that restoration is possible, a reminder that endings are not always final, a witness that God can turn tragedy into triumph in ways that exceed human logic. And as this ripple continues to expand, remember this: your obedience mattered. Your faith mattered. Your endurance mattered. What felt like a private struggle carried public purpose. What seemed like an isolated trial carried collective impact. The wow in your life will echo in others. The strength in your voice will awaken strength in someone else. The clarity in your vision will inspire clarity in another. And long after the memory of your tragedy fades, the influence of your victory will remain. We have walked through the valley together. We have faced the why that echoed in the dark. We have uncovered the hidden battles, the unseen protection, the divine strategy, the preparation, the sudden shift, and the ripple of victory. And now we stand at the edge of fulfillment. Not a fragile hope, not a distant possibility, but a living, breathing promise unfolding before you. God says, I am replacing your why with a wow. This was never just a comforting phrase. It was a prophetic declaration. The season of confusion is closing. The chapter of unanswered questions is ending. The narrative that once centered around loss is being rewritten around triumph. You may still remember how heavy it felt. You may still recall the nights when doubt tried to overtake your faith. But those memories no longer control you. They remind you. They remind you of what you survived. They remind you of the strength you discovered. They remind you that even when you could not trace God's hand, you were held by it. Now, as you step into what is ahead, you do not step as someone fragile. You step as someone formed. You step as someone refined. You step as someone who has seen the worst and is now ready for the best. The tragedy did not cancel your destiny. It clarified it. It stripped away what was unnecessary and revealed what was essential. There is peace coming that does not depend on circumstances. There is joy rising that is not tied to temporary outcomes. There is stability forming that is rooted deeper than public opinion. God is not simply restoring what was lost. He is establishing something stronger. The same voice that allowed the process now declares the promotion. The same hand that guided you through the fire now leads you into favor. The same heaven that watched you endure now releases visible evidence of reward. This is your moment of assurance. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are aligned. You are positioned. You are prepared. Everything that felt delayed was building capacity. Everything that felt broken was building character. Everything that felt unfair was building authority. And as you move forward, carry this truth deeply in your spirit. The story did not end in tragedy, and pivoted toward triumph. The why was a doorway. The wow is the destination, and you are stepping into it with clarity, confidence, and courage. There will still be challenges in life, but they will not shake you the way they once did, because now you know what God can do. Now you have evidence in your own history. Now you have seen reversal. You have experienced preservation. You have witnessed transformation. Let this be the declaration that seals this season. You will no longer interpret temporary setbacks as permanent conclusions. You will no longer shrink because of past wounds. You will no longer define yourself by what almost broke you. You will rise. You will build. You will walk boldly into rooms that once intimidated you. You will steward the blessings that once seemed unreachable. And when the full manifestation unfolds, when the open door stands before you, when the breakthrough is undeniable, when the favor becomes visible, you will not ask, "Why did this happen to me?" You will stand in awe and say, "Only God could have done this." If this message is aligned with your spirit from beginning to end, type "My triumph is now" in the comments as a prophetic declaration. Blessing code 888 is now activated. Before we close, hear this final call in the spirit. What God is doing in your life is not isolated. This word is reaching hearts around the world because seeds are being sown to keep this light burning. When you release a super thanks, join as a member, or give through PayPal, you are not just giving financially. You are sowing into transformed lives. God says in Galatians 6:9, "Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up." This is the harvest season. I am stepping forward in faith to fuel the spread of this prophetic fire. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code is on your screen. As you sow, may God open the heavens over you, multiply your seed, and accelerate your own wow season. Act now. Release your seed and align with what heaven is building. Now receive this final blessing. May the peace of God anchor your heart. May clarity replace confusion. May courage replace fear. May favor replace frustration. May every lingering why dissolve in the light of divine revelation. Your tragedy hath been transformed. Your story hath been rewritten. Your triumph has been announced. And what comes next will not just answer your questions, it will exceed them. Amen.